What's up, everybody? I'm Jorge, and welcome to Behind the Frames. This week, we're going to be covering the NFC West, looking at those players and comparing them to their ADP. But before we get to that point, let me introduce my co-host for today. I got Aaron Pags, aka Fantasy Triage. How you doing there, sir?
It's a beautiful night to be back with you guys, and a beautiful night to say Fantasy Football Live's live.
Yeah, we've missed you, buddy. We're glad you're back to full health. And
I missed you too. Here. I missed the smell of this live broadcast.
Nice. And Mr. Nate Markham, follow him at Nate Markham. How you doing?
I'm really glad that he went with the smell instead of he misses the taste of this broadcast,
because that would be just a little too weird.
It would have been
just a bit.
You got it. You got that pass.
Nice. So, of course, every week we just do a brief synopsis of what's going on in the fantasy world. Then we get into talking about players and comparing them to their ADP, getting you all ready for draft season. So let's just talk about some relevant fantasy news real quick. As we all know, or at least we should know, the opt-out deadline is Thursday. Aaron, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Who knows more about COVID than me? Opt-out, NFL opt-out starts. The deadline, I guess, is tomorrow at 4 p.m. Thursday, tomorrow, 4 p.m. Already 60 NFL players have opted out. I don't know that there's any really like super fantasy relevant names, but one thing you do want to make sure is that if you got like a franchise quarterback, that your left tackle doesn't opt out. If you got, a running back that relies heavy on running between the tackles, that those tackles are still out there. So pay attention to what happens tomorrow. It's definitely going to be probably a crazy hour or two.
Mm-hmm. And for those of you like me and my fellow league mates in my home league who are drafting, if you're doing a slow draft, take your time.
Yeah, take your time tomorrow for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Let's talk about also pup lists and players going on the pup list. We had some relevant names like Jarvis Landry go on the pup list earlier this week. Can you tell us a little bit about that and why all of us should not be freaking out at this point?
Just pump the brakes a little bit on the pup. I mean, typically in years past, pup meant out for till week 6 at the earliest. But we are in a new era of pup where they can like designate you to return as long as you're not on the pup on week 1. So we are looking forward to these guys still playing, but it does mean that they may have a little bit of lingering issues. So, use a little bit of caution with these guys who go on the pup, but also you might be able to take advantage of that, right? The rest of the league might be looking at, pup. And then all of a sudden Jarvis Landry falls in your draft and you're like, heck, I mean, the guy's going to play. Okay. Jarvis Landry's going to play. So I don't expect him to miss any time.
Nice. Okay. Well, let's just get into it, folks. Well, let's talk about some players in the NFC West. We're going to be covering all the offensive skill players today. And new to the show, we're going to be covering some IDP targets to look at, courtesy of Nate Markham. So let's just get down to it. Let's start with quarterbacks. Here are two that are going in the 5th round. They're literally, in terms of ADP, if you look at Fantasy Pros' ADP 12-team half PPR list, you have Russell Wilson and you have Kyler Murray, quarterback 4, quarterback 5. And they're both going around players like Bobby Trees, a.k.a. Robert Woods, David Montgomery, Devontae Parker, Terry McLaurin, Mr. F1 himself, and DJ Chark. Right off the top of my head, I would rather have all those players than one of those two, than pay a premium for those two quarterbacks. I think that goes without saying, right? Nate, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think after week that we keep circling back, obviously anybody by now pretty much knows that I think that we're all in on the Matt Ryans, the Matthew Staffords, the Drew Brees of the world, where they're going, which means we
who is it? Right?
Pretty much, which is shocking that their ADP hasn't risen from since then. I'm expecting it just to jump up and some point. I don't want to call it normalizing, but
do you think a lot of it has to do with most of the people drafting now are quote unquote experts? These are a lot of like big time leagues and guys who are drafting hundreds of teams. And so they're setting this ADP bar at weight on quarterback, because that's like a typical like expert thing. It's not what you'll find in most home leagues.
That's exactly right. That's actually a great point too.
Yeah, that's really good. Now let's get to the other two quarterbacks in the division. I don't think we need to waste our time on talking about Russell Wilson and Kyler Murray.
They're both good. They're good. Get them on your team.
Good.
Yeah, get them
Rushing
on your team.
upside, a little too pricey for us. Now, people who are in the bargain aisle that we may be wanting to target going forward, well, maybe not both of them, but let's talk about both 12th round quarterbacks. One I really like, one I don't. Let's start with the one I don't. Jimmy Garoppolo, QB 21, 12th round. Doesn't do enough from a fantasy perspective to make him that much of a steal going forward. The quarterback I do like, though, is Jared Goff, quarterback 19. His ADP, he's going around kickers and some wide receiver threes. At that point, I'd probably
still
load it
play
up
with kickers. There's still kicker leagues.
Hey, you know what? Kickers matter. All right. I'm not. We won't get into that right now.
The Greg Zuerlein hype train getting ready to take off.
You know what? Greg Zuerlein hype train is alive and well. Thank you very much.
It's got one passenger, Jorge Edwards.
I'll get him every time. And that's fine with me. So Jared Goff, he, considering what he did last year, it was a drop off from what they were doing a couple seasons ago, sure. But he's still a viable quarterback. He throws for a lot of yards. The volume is there in terms of passing volume. I'm not going to say it's like Jameis Winston passing volume, but it's decent passing volume. And for the 12th round, I feel like that is a steal for a top quality quarterback. That pretty much wraps up.
He throws touchdowns, right? Like he throws touchdowns. That's what he does, and that is important in fantasy. I mean,
right. The problem was that he threw interceptions last year at a much higher rate. The touchdown interception rate was just plummeted versus 2018. Split the difference. So if you split the difference and for yards, that's 4,600, 4,500, somewhere around there, and split the difference between touchdowns, and you have 28, 29. You give me 4,500 yards and 30 touchdowns, and at
in the 12th round, man, come on, that's crazy. That's a steal.
Yeah.
We'll get into running backs, of course. I don't know if that's going to have a change on their philosophy. I don't know. I don't want to get ahead of it. Let's go.
Well, you know what? You had the great transition there.
You just did.
I'm learning.
There. Nicely done. Let's get into some running backs. Aaron, what do we got here?
All right. Well, I mean, if we're going to talk about it, let's talk about it. Let's talk about the Rams backfield. This is going to be a much debated topic, hot topic amongst experts. Everyone's got their guy. Everyone's got their horse. Who's your horse? Is it Darrell Henderson? Is it Malcolm Brown? Is it Cam Akers? Mine is Cam Akers. I just think talent wins out in this backfield. He is the best pass catching back in their backfield. He fits into this offensive scheme perfectly. He's not like this little scat back that people think he is. Like he led the NCAA in yards after contact for a running back last season. He was like an elite type level prospect that now falls into a situation that produced Todd Gurley and his two bum freaking knees into like still fantasy, not even fantasy relevant. Like Todd Gurley helped people win leagues last year. And so I think Cam Akers shines in this backfield and like just takes it over with his talent alone. Darrell Henderson had his chance. He and clearly the Rams are behind him because they went out and drafted another running back. He had his shot in the backfield. He didn't get it done. And now the Rams have moved on. Like everyone moves on from running backs really quickly in this league. And, I feel bad for the guy. Malcolm Brown is maybe a goal line, maybe a vulture touchdown guy, but that's about it for there. Cam Akers is the PPR back for sure. Half PPR for sure. No doubt. I mean, maybe even from week one.
Just want to say one thing. Todd Gurley had one bum knee, not two bum knees.
I don't know if he had three knees. I bet they'd all be bum.
Exactly.
Let's move on to a couple of the better I think this division is actually loaded with good running backs and value wise. One guy that of course everyone loves and they should love is Chris Carson. Seattle, he's the man in the Seattle backfield. There's no question about it. Bell cow, 100%. He had a hip injury last year. Absolutely no concern. Didn't need surgery. Rehabbed it all in the offseason. He's ready to come back. They brought in Carlos Hyde's carcass. Guy's always injured, right? There's just no competition there. And where he's going is ADP. He's a running back 16 off the board, the 16th running back. This is crazy value. He's way too good to be an RB2. Way too good. Standalone RB1. He can be your first running back. I mean, you're going to end up, people who draft Chris Carson are going to end up with two RB1s on their team because they're already going to have a running back.
All right, I'm going to put you on the spot. Chris Carson is going right before your Melvin Gordon. Carson or Gordon?
Boom slang.
Carson,
Wow.
Yes, exactly.
Carson. Okay. Well, I'm gonna cop out here just slightly. PPR leagues is Gordon.
Okay.
Carson in all other leagues. I think Gordon's just got the reception floor of like 50 catches, and that is baked into him. And so I'll split the middle. I want either one of those guys for sure. PPR, Gordon, and half Carson. Okay, now let's get
with the elections. Very good centrist.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Vote for both. So here we go. Moving on to the other two running backs in the division, Kenny and Drake, Raheem Mostert. I'm not sure if I want to make Bob Lung mad first, and then make him happy, or make him happy and then make him mad. So I'm gonna make him happy first. Kenny and Drake, Mr. Inconsistency at running back last year. Of course, the trade, he moved over. His ADP right now, he's running back 15. So he's gone around similar time as Chris Carson, maybe just a little bit earlier. Expert drafts, he's being moved up a little bit because of the Arizona offense, the pace, the ability to catch the ball. No one believes in Chase Edmonds for whatever reason. I think he's a fine running back, a great handcuff, good steal in late rounds. But Kenny and Drake last year had 8 games with less than 9 points. Yes, most of them were with Miami. But when he moved over, here was his points per game: 26, half point PPR, 26, 7, 11, 6, 8, 39, 31, 15. He scored 7 touchdowns in the last 3 weeks, 4 in one game. That really inflated him. I think he's a fine, nice piece to your team. He can be on your fantasy team. I was really high on Kenyon Drake early in draft season. I did a little more digging. I've come back to earth on him a little bit. I think his ADP is going to go up, and I think that's when we all need to get off of Kenyon Drake.
When would you take Kenyon Drake?
Man, like I said, I think I got to keep him outside of my top 3 rounds. I think I need to build a core and then take the shot on Kenyon Drake in round 4, where he can blow it up for me, right? If I'm going running a wide receiver, and then filling in with Chris Carson in 3, and then coming back with Kenyon Drake in 4, I think that's a fine four-player start. But I can't trust Kenyon Drake the way that people are trusting Kenyon Drake. And as he climbs up, and he's going to keep climbing up because he appears to be the guy who's going to get all the work there. But I really just have a feeling that, again, talent. Chase Edmonds showed it when he had the opportunity. And I think, Arizona, they run a lot of plays. They run guys on and off the field. And it might just be Chase Edmonds that's on the field when they're in scoring position, not Kenyon Drake. People might be very disappointed with Kenyon Drake this year.
Right. So you were
not a comment considering Kenyon Drake from Fantasy Go NFL. Drake is a beast. I'm all about that hotline bling.
David. Drake reference, Jorge, in case you were wondering.
Reference to what? No, I don't know. I don't get the reference.
Drake, Jorge. He's a big Toronto Raptors fan.
Right.
We even have a Canadian writer now. You need to get hit with Canadian stuff.
That's right.
Sorry, Hartley, if you're listening and watching.
Okay. So wait. Let's finish up running backs real quick before we apologize to everybody. I'm going to apologize, Bob Long. Raheem Mostert. Okay. I love Bob for his consistency report, and thank you, Bob. Go out and get that if you haven't. Raheem Mostert. He's RB28. He's going in the 6th round. Kyle Shanahan obviously run that offense for the last 3 years. Only one running back has gone over 160 carries with Shanahan running the offense. And it's not going to be Mostert. Coleman, McKinnon, Wilson, these guys are all in the mix to get carries. We always talk about regression, touchdown regression, this regression, all these kinds of regression things. Raheem Mostert is like Mr. Regression, right? Like they should just call him regression. He had 5.6 yards per carry in the NFL. Come on, man. That is never going to hold up. And almost a 6% touchdown rate. 6% of his carries are going to be touchdowns again. No way. Those are both coming back down into the 4s. A 4% touchdown rate is awesome. So even if he does get, a few of those touchdowns still hang around, his yards per carry are going to go down like almost 2 yards, and he's not going to get enough carries. He's just not. He's not getting 250 carries, guys. I'm sorry. So at running back 28, fine, maybe, meh. But if you're thinking like you're just going to sit around and wait to scoop up Mostert and he's going to be your RB2 and everything's going to be great and you're just going to start him every week, you are missing the boat here on Mostert, man. He is not that guy. And that is not that offense.
Would you rather take a gamble on Tevin Coleman in the later rounds in San Francisco?
Yeah, I mean, when you don't know what's happening, you want to invest the least. right? You if you don't know, and we don't know, it doesn't, like he wanted to trade, he wanted to get out of town. They gave him, they're going to work on his contract weird thing and whatever. Like he might still leave. Who the heck knows? You know what I mean? And so, but we do know that like, Kyle Shanahan loves Tevin Coleman. Kyle Shanahan loves Jerick McKinnon. All he does is, and reports coming out, McKinnon looks great. He's in shape. He's ready to play. Of course, we watched Jeff Wilson score 3 touchdowns in a game. You know what I mean? Like all these things happen in that San Francisco team. And I think people are falling, like, I think they've been rocked to sleep by a lot of the Mostert talk. And he was really good down the stretch. We got to watch him in the playoffs. He's one of these like playoff hype type. Right. And like, I just think people think they can wait and get Mostert and be okay. And I don't think that's the case. I really don't. Yeah,
it's a good point. And Fantasy Go again. Yeah, you named it. You can't trust it. Mm-hmm. There are certain backfields that you just can't trust. You can't trust San Francisco. You can't trust New England. Right. Philadelphia is up for debate.
Baltimore might work into that mix here as the season goes on with Dobbins and Edwards and Ingram. Right. But yeah, it's the hot hand probably is going to prevail most likely.
So before we get to the White House, let me just recap the brew real fast. We love Chris Carson. He is a steal as your RB2, no doubt. Of course we can't trust the LA backfield, but Henderson and Akers are going really close together in the draft. So if you want to get a piece of it, I want you to go after Akers. Kenyon Drake is moving up. He's moving in literally the wrong direction for me. Like if his price came down, I might be interested in him, but I am not interested in him on the way up. You can't overpay for that guy. He was a bust for his whole career until he got traded. So, and then
we have another question real quick before you keep going. With Rashad Penny coming back off of his ACL injury that he suffered mid-season or late to last year, and if you have an IR spot, are you keeping that for COVID, or are you drafting him?
No, you cannot waste your IR spots on a guy who you don't know. He's coming off an ACL. Big, tall guy who, those big, tall running backs, sometimes those knees are just a mess. They're targets, right? Those tall running backs are targets.
And I know you mentioned the carcass of Carlos Hyde, and I'm not a Carlos Hyde truther, but he is coming off a 1,000-yard season. So if there is the Carson injury, or if we have to go back to a year and a half ago where the fumbling issues came into play,
sure,
one of those two factors start to happen, Carlos Hyde's more than capable of taking them. I would much rather have Carlos Hyde on the Seattle rushing game for Seattle than with Houston. I
agree with it.
I'm with you. Yeah, I totally agree with you here. I'm looking for Carlos Hyde's ADP, and it is non-existent. He's like outside the top. He's like outside the top 60 running backs. I mean, if you're drafting, if you've got 5 running backs on your team, Carlos Hyde is a fine 5th running back.
Yeah, he's a good 35 picks after Penny.
Yeah,
wow. Nice. All right, let's transition to some wide receivers. We got, of course, newest addition to the division, DeAndre Hopkins, 1st round, 11th overall. Look, he's a great wide receiver. The target share that he had in Houston, I don't think he's going to get in Arizona.
Is Nate drinking red wine right now? The mood we're setting for wide receivers is
Wine Wednesday, and I'm classy now.
It's Hopkins in red, apparently.
It was out of a glass, not even a solo cup. I mean,
have the bottle if we need
to. Very nice.
Thank you very much.
Nice. I just think there are too many mouths to feed in that offense with Drake out of the backfield, with Christian Kirk emerging. Larry Fitzgerald is still there. I'm having a hard time seeing DeAndre Hopkins get that target share like he had in Houston. Therefore, I'm probably wanting to get a Nick Chubb or a Mixon. Maybe if I do, okay. Josh Jacobs, or DeAndre Hopkins. Aaron.
Wow. Man, there's just no competition for Jacobs in the backfield. And he is like, that's what they built their offense around, right? Is Josh Jacobs. So I want Josh Jacobs. I want the center of the offense. I don't want, who knows what kind of plays they're going to be running for Hopkins. And
right.
It's an interesting one though.
To answer Fantasy Go's question, as far as with Hopkins, is Kirk and Drake receiving Is Fitzgerald draftable? I love Jerry Fitzgerald. That's
Jerry
what I just said.
Fitzgerald, the best.
Jerry, I love Jerry Fitzgerald. Woo! I also
He makes
like,
a hell of a sandwich, that Jerry Fitzgerald man.
yeah, he does. I also like Larry Fitzgerald. He is a trusted wide receiver, a veteran on that team. Murray went to him early and often last year. I don't see that changing. I see that's going to be that release valve, through the slot. No, I think Fitzgerald is definitely draftable. I'm actually going to fade Kirk a little bit. I don't know what to make of Kirk, to be honest with you. And the fact that it's year 3 now we're going into him, and we don't know what to think of him. That should tell you a little bit something.
Christian Kirk feels like that dead spot on your roster that you're just going to keep way too long if you draft him. Maybe he'll throw up like a 16-point week in like week 3 after you've benched him, and then exactly. And it's like, why do I have Christian Kirk on my team?
Yep. All right, yeah, that's a good point. Heading now to the 3rd round, we got Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp. Let me tell you, everyone by now has read the Twitter threads about when the Rams shifted to 12 personnel. That Robert Woods was emphasized in the passing game more than Cooper Kupp, and if they stick with that 12 personnel system, that they're going to probably favor Woods over Kupp. And people are forgetting what Kupp was able to do in the first half of the season last year. Granted, his performance precipitously dropped as they switched to that personnel setting. But in the 3rd round, I personally would rather wait in the 5th round and get Robert Woods. Again, there's still a lot of running back talent available. Pulling up his ADP right now. Cooper Kupp. Okay, so we have like Melvin Gordon, Chris Carson, Leonard Fournette, Todd Gurley. Again, running back is going to be your bread and butter this year, as it should be every year, to be honest with you, especially with running backs that have reception upside if you're playing in half PPR or full PPR leagues.
Right.
Robert Woods in the 5th round. Another 5th round target. Here's one I'm kind of curious about. I want to get your guys' opinion on. DK Metcalf, 2nd-year wide receiver in Seattle. You have Tyler Lockett there already, who is the established number 1. Tyler Lockett had over 100 targets, Metcalf was just short of that, I want to say, in the 90s in targets. 5th round, going around players like Jonathan Taylor, rookie running back in Indianapolis. Darren Waller, as Aaron, you said a few weeks ago, the de facto wide receiver 1 in Oakland. David Johnson. I feel like those names that I just listed, that Metcalf is kind of like a safe gamble here, given the chemistry that he was building with Russell Wilson down the road. Nate, what are your thoughts?
I think it's going to go with I think the squeaky wheel gets the grease is the old adage that we always go with, and I think that's what Russ is doing right now. That whole let Russ eat and let Russ cook and everything to get him the opportunity to control that offense a little bit more. I think that's the narrative that everybody's wanting to build up, and when he gets that opportunity, he hasn't had it. They haven't unleashed the offense yet with Russell Wilson as the leader of that. Other than he's been great. Don't get me wrong. But he hasn't had a chance to shine and spread his wings a little bit. And if he does, I think DK Metcalf easily outproduces his ADP. I also think Tyler Lockett does as well.
Right. I think 2 guys that you brought up, I just want to touch on are pretty much this is like this weird position that I've kind of been keeping my eye on. This is Cooper Kupp and DK Metcalf being good goal line wide receivers. That's like an underrated thing in fantasy. We don't talk about that a lot. We talk about the goal line backs and the guys who steal the touchdowns, but who are the guys who the quarterback looks to inside the 20-yard line to make a play? Who are the guys that can go score touchdowns? That's like the most relevant thing to our fantasy teams, right? It's obviously most relevant to the NFL quarterbacks because they want to score touchdowns and win games. I mean, Kupp and Metcalf were dominant in the red zone for their teams all year long, personnel irregardless. Like Kupp ended the year, last 5 games, caught a touchdown, all 5 of them. When they had 2 tight ends on the field, when they had threats everywhere, you know what I mean? So Kupp and Metcalf are now Metcalf only 1 year, but Metcalf last year was a guy that Russell Wilson looked toward inside the 20, and he made a lot of plays in that zone, and that is where we make our money in fantasy is in the end zone.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Metcalf was 21% target share in the red zone. Cooper Kupp was 30%, 29.5 or whatever. Those are
red zone. I mean, I get goal line wide receivers. It's like a new position that we're going to make up.
I would like to look into that break of Cooper Kupp, just that whole 12 personnel, because he is not. I don't want to bash the situation because I don't believe that they're actually going to go with that 12 personnel the entire season. I don't. I think McVay is going to go back to the traditional way prior to all, everything. They had a lot of odd situations going on that I think put them in that situation. And if Kupp can stay on the inside, not have to line up one-on-one, I think he'll exceed. I think he should be taken before Woods if that scenario happens. But that being said, I do love Woods for where he's going more than I like Kupp at 34th overall.
That's a very good point. All right, let's switch it over to tight ends now. George Kittle, tight end 2, going in the second round around Miles Sanders.
Take him. He's good. George Kittle.
George Kittle is good, or Jorge Kittle, as I will call him from now on.
Oh.
Going around Miles Sanders, Kenyon Drake, Austin Eckler, Mike Evans, Amari Cooper. Me personally, I'm not a proponent of drafting tight ends early. I feel like I'd rather just get value later in the draft. And considering, the running back fall off, like everyone is talking about, like we're talking about, I think I'd rather have all of those players, with the exception of Mike Evans, over George Kittle. Nate, your thoughts there? You look a little.
No. I agree with you. I'm just when you said the old Mike Evans thing, I'm wondering if that's going to lead to a tangent that you might go on with a anti-Mike Evans. Is that what we're?
Don't be anti-Mike Evans.
Yeah,
I'm intrigued. I didn't know this.
No, well, you know what? If you want to get a good,
is he your Keenan Allen? I mean, what's up with this? We don't know.
He is a Keenan Allen for me. However, if you want to read more about Mike Evans and his potential, whether or not he's worth a fantasy investment, head over to fantasyandframes.com and read our latest 4-eyed observations, where we're looking at different players from each team answering one important fantasy relevant question. Our writer, Jeremy Noble, just put out that article today. Look at that article, check it out, form your own opinions about Mike Evans. Tell us what you think, because obviously your feedback is important. Okay, so that's the.
You see David's question. David asking us if Jordan Reed. There you go. Do we worry about Jordan Reed?
He's trolling Redskin fans. He's totally trolling the Redskins.
Washington football team fans.
Oh my God! I said it. I said it.
You horrible person.
It's been fun. See you later. We're out of here.
Yeah, no, I don't see that
Behind
happening.
the Frames canceled after 7 episodes.
Exactly. Absolutely. No, Jordan Reed, I don't see coming in doing anything to disrupt Kittle's performance or targets or whatnot. To be honest with you, I'll be surprised if Jordan Reed makes it through the preseason.
So will he.
Exactly.
Yeah, so will he. And as a Jordan Reed fan back in the day in Washington, you loved seeing him play when he was playing. You loved seeing the success. You did not like seeing all the concussions. This guy is a concussion magnet. I know he's reuniting with Shanahan, and Shanahan helped bring him into the league. Still not jumping on that train and worried about George Kittle.
What other tight ends do we have, Jorge?
Yeah, are there any others?
Yeah, so we got Tyler Higbee, tight end 7, 6th round. There's Tyler Higbee, when they switched to 12 personnel, was emphasized more in that passing game. Granted, Gerald Everett did miss a few games down the stretch, but when you look at the efficiency of Higbee, he had 401 yards after the catch. That was tight end 4. When targeted by Goff, Goff had a quarterback rating of 109, which is pretty good. Everett had a 80.2 reception percentage, so he was catching everything that Goff was throwing at him, compared to Everett's, which was 68.5. Look, he's going around players like Jarvis Landry, Darius Geis, the aforementioned Cam Akers, Kareem Hunt. 6th round for a tight end, again, it goes back to my saying, I rather wait on tight ends, but if I'm going to invest in an early pick, I'm getting the top 3. I'm not getting the tight end 7. Tight end 7 and tight end 13 to me.
Spot on, Jorge.
Mean nothing. They mean the same thing.
Mike Gesicki.
Smith.
No, especially with the wide receivers opting out in Miami, like we were talking about during our pre-show. This is just going to help Mike Gesicki even more. Let's see. After that, let's go to Arizona. To be honest with you, I have no idea who the Arizona tight end is.
Oh man, I thought you were going to tell us.
Max Williams? Is it Max Williams?
Yep, because Ricky Seals-Jones is now in Kansas City, I believe.
Yes.
And so if you no questions about Arizona tight ends from
Yeah,
anybody?
no Max Williams questions, people.
All right,
Come on. 6 of you are watching live right now on Twitter.
Jorge at fantasyandframes.com. All your Max Williams fantasy
Yeah,
knowledge.
exactly. That's the email address. Send all your Max Williams hate my way. Then there's Seattle. You have Greg Olson. We have the legend of Will Disley, the 5 games that Will Disley is on the field each year. He cranks out fantasy production. I personally don't trust either of them. Aaron, if you had to pick one, though, who would you pick?
You're going to make me take one?
Yes.
I'll take the one that when he plays, he's going to have some upside. I'll take Disley.
Fair enough. Nate, same thing with you? Or neither?
The Will Ferrell impersonation of Greg Olson on that Zoom meeting that they had, because personally, I think he has as much upside as either one of those two. Did you guys see that?
I did.
Pretty
it was pretty good.
All right, let's round us off with some IDP targets real quick, Nate. What are your guys? Who are your guys?
If you start with Arizona, you look back, Chandler Jones last year had career year, 19 sacks, 13.8 fantasy points per game. The question in Arizona is Devondre Campbell. He really kind of ruined Deion Jones last year in terms of what his upside was and capped his ceiling. Same thing could be had in Arizona. But I do see Chandler Jones. He's had double-digit sacks and tackle for loss for the past 5 years, so the floor is pretty stable with him. Jordan Hicks last year was the number 1 IDP player in all of football. If you go by total points per game, he was second behind Darius Leonard. Darius Leonard and Jordan Hicks are not 1 and 2 in my opinion. Jordan Hicks is a linebacker 1, but I worry again. I just see that offense staying on the field a little bit longer now with the addition. So when your offense is on the field, your defense can't be. The tackles can't be there. He's still an LB1. Budda Baker is the guy for me in Arizona. Budda Baker is just a legitimate stud. He was number 2 defensive back last year, led all defensive backs in tackles. He averaged 13.8 points per game. He plays everywhere. The question that really is going to be intriguing with this Vance Joseph defense is Isaiah Simmons and what he does, because he can play everywhere. He can play linebacker, he can play in the slot, he can cover, he might play quarterback, he might play running back. Who knows? Sorry, Kenyon Drake, truthers, you're gone. Isaiah Simmons is coming in. He's getting 7 carries for 45 yards and 2 touchdowns. But he is a Swiss Army knife of just absolute studliness. He is great, and they got a great opportunity.
It's the wine. It's the red wine talking, Nate.
Red wine talking, but Isaiah Simmons, if you watch him, I promise you will be as enamored with him as I am. I just don't know where he's going to play or what he's going to do. If we move over to the West Coast to the LA Rams, they have a new defense coordinator and Brandon Staley. Brandon Staley has 3 pieces to work with as far as IDP goes. Number 1 is Aaron Donald. Don't need to say much more other than I think that as the de facto number 1 defensive lineman in 2018 going in, I think the floor is a little bit less high. I mean, he's still going to be great. He's going to be either, top 2 or 3 overall. Maybe Donnell Hunter might overtake him, but he's got nobody to stop him getting double, triple, quadruple teamed, even though he's shown that he can, get through all those. The 2 guys that I'm intrigued with, both at safeties, John Johnson III, Taylor Rapp. Taylor Rapp is a rookie last year, 100 tackles. That doesn't happen too often. Showed he can play in coverage, highly graded by PFF in both. JJ the third, though, that's the one to go after. Injury shortened season last year, 2018, 119 tackles, 12.2 points per game. Guy's just a beast. He'll play up, he'll play back, can kind of do it all. I'm intrigued to see what he might have this year. As far as defense from Seattle's the biggest question mark is Jamal Adams. Jamal Adams, huge acquisition. What we don't know is if they're going to use him the same way that he was used in New York. Bradley McDougall, who actually left from Seattle, went to New York. Last year didn't have a lot of quarterback pressures, wasn't in the backfield all that often. That's what was bread and butter for Jamal Adams. And so I wonder if he's going to still be the number 1 defensive back or number 2. Him and Budda Baker both pretty stellar. Or if this lack of, I don't want to call it, pressures is going to hurt his numbers. Overall, I still think he's going to be great. I just don't think the ceiling is as high as it was. KJ Wright had a career year last year. He's going to be overdrafted, in my opinion. Tackles were fantastic, 132, but I don't see that same production. Bobby Wagner, though, I do. Bobby Wagner, there's not much more I need to say about him other than the fact that he's been top 7 overall in the last 5 years. You can't get better than Bobby Wagner. Realistically, I have an article coming out about the IDP impacts for the NFC West. And in there, I phrase the old adage, KISS. If you guys are familiar, that means keep it simple, stupid. And if you're in the first round and Bobby Wagner is staring you in the face, keep it simple. Take him, solidify your defense. He's as good as they get. Last but not least is the NFC champions, runner-up to the Kansas City Chiefs, the San Francisco 49ers.
Every chance he gets. Literally every chance he gets.
Feel good to say that?
It's red, same color as the Chiefs. Kansas City Chiefs. I'll stop because Robert Saleh has my respect as a defensive coordinator. He turned, look what he did with that team. They were really pretty much going into last year non-existent as far as a defensive unit, and they finished obviously extremely high. And the reason for that, honestly, cohesiveness as a unit, IDP factors, there's pretty much two. You lose DeForest Buckner, which is a huge impact, but Joey Bosa's brother, Nick Bosa.
Nice save.
Thank you very much. Pretty good with that. Was the rookie of the year last year, 9.5 sacks, was constantly pressuring the quarterback. He had 25 QB hits. He will be, especially in a dynasty format, one of your first picks at defensive line. But even in redraft, he's a defensive line 1. The sky's the limit for the kid. He's fun to watch. And then Fred Warner. Have you guys seen the Fred Warner MMA tape?
Yes, with the punching bags.
I
gotta check it out.
Shit. It is incredible. Imagine a punching bag in front of you and a punching bag behind you, and he front kicks the front punching bag, does a backflip, and kicks the one behind him. Yeah. You do not get points in fantasy IDP for punches thrown. If you did, Myles Garrett would have got a couple extra points. Thank you very much. But he didn't. But Fred Warner did have 2-year totals.
And Dominican Sue got some points for those kicks, though.
He was yes. Dominican Sue, very good. I should have written that one down. Well, we got you here, Aaron. We missed you.
That's what I'm here for, Nate.
I know. But at 13.2 fantasy points per game, he is one of my ideal linebacker ones to go after. If you're not going to reach too super early, he's got a pretty stable floor. Other than that, in the defense, in the secondary, not much. Richard Sherman, And the face stomp is worth 7 points. Groin stomp, 9 points.
Nice. Well,
you mentioned dynasty briefly. I know, Jorge, you said earlier this week you're in your first dynasty league. If you're in a dynasty that lets you draft like anybody off the street, doesn't matter if they've ever played a single football game in your life, you want to keep Ariel Masharola on your list, folks. Ariel Masharola.
Who is Ariel Masharola?
Aaron's cousin.
Go out and draft him.
Nice. All right, and with that wraps up our take on the NFC West versus ADP. Quickly going back, though, to the IDP fantasy point scoring. We're using Fantasy Pros IDP scoring rubric there just to stay consistent, easier for you all to track. So just be aware of that going forward. But that's it. People, go home. Spend time
Wash
with
your
your families.
hands. Wear a mask.
Wash your hands. Wear a mask. Do whatever you need to do to stay safe.
And Ariola Maraschino, thanks for watching. Good luck.
All right, we'll catch you next week, folks. Thank you for watching Behind the Frames.